The new turbulent lands from the Secrets of Strixhaven commander decks give me hope. Win rate disparities between seeds has always been a big issue in Commander, and these lands are a small step towards addressing that. They are tapped lands with dual typing that enter untapped if our opponents control 8 or more lands. Let's say it's turn 3 and nobody has ramped. Seed 1 plays a turbulent land. Their opponents are on 2 lands each, 6 total, so it enters tapped. Seed 2 does the same and gets a bit closer, 7 lands total, but not quite there. Starting at Seed 3 though, the turbulents begin entering untapped. This is of course a minor advantage, one that easily slips into the background, and that's exactly why I love the design of these lands. It's a subtle push into the right direction, one that's barely noticeable but should still accumulate in the long run. Particularly if wizards print more cards along the same philosophy, which I sincerely hope they do. Cards designed for Commander shouldn't just be pushed engines that abuse the 4-player dynamic, but also helpful pieces that ease some of the tensions of the format. The Turbulents are especially good, because even if you're in the first or second seed, they are still fine, perfectly playable. That's exactly where these kinds of cards should be. Reasonable to play either way, but slightly better for players in disadvantageous seats. A couple months ago, I made a video about this exact issue. In that video, I proposed a stronger fix, the Lucky Energy, which is basically an emblem treasure given to the last player. I don't want to bring up the whole discussion right now. If you're interested in that, please watch that video. But I have an update I would like to share. Ever since that video, I've been tracking the results of my Lucky Energy games. And I finally have enough recorded matches that I feel it's sensible data to share, and I thought you might be interested. Across my 154 tracked games, Seed 1 has won 25.97% of games, Seed 2 25.32%, Seed 3 23.38%, and Seed 4 25.32%. This is of course still not perfect. We can see that player 3 struggles a little bit, but when compared to the usual distribution of 30, 25, 25 and 20%, it's a vast improvement. In a perfect world, we would like the average seed of the winner to be 2.5, but as things stand, it's 2.35, a 6% deviation. This may not sound like that much, but because of the 4-player nature of the format, that 6% deviation is felt double when compared to 1 vs 1 games. With the Lucky Energy though, our deviation is only 0.08%, 7.5 times better than without it. This is a tremendous improvement that evidences meaningful adjustments to the rules can be made. Ideally, I would like to find another small fix for player 3, but I haven't been able to come up with anything that felt unintrusive enough to be good. And then Wizards delivers the perfect solution in these precons. The Turbulent lands are fantastic because they're cards designed for commanders that serve a purpose beyond just being busted chase cards. I've often seen folks suggest that the Bond lands should be put into every precon and printed at common, and I both agree and disagree. I agree with the concept of making good lands accessible on a budget. I don't think the Bond lands should be as expensive as they are, but I disagree with rallying behind the Bond lands because I think they're terribly designed cards. For Magic's land system to make sense, basics should be the foundation, and all other lands should be balanced with them in mind. Untapped lands should come with either a condition or downside. Fetch lands and shock lands are certainly better than basics, but they do actually have conditions and costs, which is healthy for the environment as a whole. The original duels are terribly designed cards that we shouldn't be aiming to imitate. The Bond lands aren't quite as bad, lacking basic land types, but they're still unconditional dual lands, which sucks. But the Turbulent lands are perfect. They are dual lands with a condition that is actively beneficial to the game. The next step then is printing them to death, and we'll see how that goes. I hope they're in all precons and Commander bundle products to come, and that they'll be worth less than the cardboard they're printed on. I've got a top 9 list of cards for you all again, but before that, let's hurry through some honorable mentions. Dragons. Secrets of Strixhaven brings a cycle of elder dragons with it, one for each college. They are for the most part expensive and specific, so they didn't make my list proper, but here's a quick rundown of them. Lorehold the Historian and Quandrix the Proof are both somewhat interesting value engines, but I don't like how they monopolize game time at the table, so they are my least favorites. Prismari the Inspiration is a huge win condition that can never be allowed on the board, which makes him an annoying commander but a fun late game finisher for the 99. Yeah, he'll still take up a lot of game time, but afterwards, I'm at least dead, and I can appreciate that. Viverbloom the Balancer tries really hard to be Sammy, but doesn't quite reach that peak. I think Viverbloom is actually a lot clunkier than he initially reads, because he needs both creatures on the board and instants and sorceries in hand, which is a bit of a difficult arrangement to get. He pours into two somewhat opposing directions. This can be a problem, but you could also interpret it as a feature that makes for more interesting deck building. Finally, Silverquill the Disputant, an Orsov. Wait, hold up. A Silverquill spell, copy, spell, slinger, creature sacrifice hybrid deck. Very strange, but that's what makes him interesting. Doubling up on token makers with attached value like Temp with Bunnies to immediately create more fodder, or casting Exhume to bring back the creature we sacrificed on top of something else. That sounds pretty cool. Still, I worry that Silverquill decks will devolve into tedious removal piles, because that's what most of Silverquill's instant and sorceries are, but I do think there's a lot of room for creativity here. Planeswalkers. This set has two new Planeswalkers. Professor Delian Fell is a 4-mana Viverbloom Planeswalker that enters with 5 loyalty and has a +2 to gain free life. His ultimate is a -6 that gives us a Sanguine Bond as an emblem. Usually I don't like Planeswalkers that much in Commander because they're so easy to attack and kill, but this fella enters with 5 loyalty and immediately ticks up to 7. That's difficult to take down, especially if it's ramped out, which is expected because we are on green. There will be many turn-free void states that can't touch this guy. And even if he's cast later, green and black are certainly capable of protecting a Planeswalker for a turn. And that's all we need, because after a single turn, Professor Dalian Fell ultimates. Now, not every deck can use a Sanguine Bond, but if you are in a life gain shell, it'll be fantastic. His other abilities are fine, nothing crazy, but also not terrible. Professor Dalian Fell is certainly narrow, but I think it's great where it's good. Ral Zarek, Guest Lecturer, is similar. A black 3-mana Planeswalker that on his -2 lets us reanimate a creature with mana value 3 or less. Silverquill, mostly white, has this great set of reanimation that can bring back any permanent of mana value 3 or less. Sun Titan, Redemption Choir, Sevine's Reclamation, and Squall, Seed Mercenary. These cards are absolutely fantastic when given a bit of consideration during deck building, and Ral Zarek, Guest Lecturer, is an interesting addition into that shell. If we have a creature we want to reanimate with our Sun Titan, then we can first bring back Ral and then use Ral to reanimate the creature. Ral's reanimation only consumes 2 of his free starting loyalty, so he sticks around, adding annoying repeatable value to our reanimation loops. Our opponents then have to kill Ral, or we just use his -1 next turn to make them discard a card and kill Ral ourselves, and then we reanimate him again. This is of course quite the specific engine, but I think within it, this Ral is fine. Look, he's still not great, but I can at least see a decent use case. Protector's Gaze, Embrace the Paradox, Mind Roots, and Simone's Experiment are all cards that have a reasonable effect stapled to ramp. While I don't expect these cards to be huge playmakers, I feel like there's solid considerations for budget and landfall decks. Embrace the Paradox is especially good. During my Turtles review, I called out Lessons from Life as being a better Urban Evolution, and Urban Evolution is a fine card. Embrace the Paradox is an instant speed Urban Evolution, which is actually a huge upgrade. I think that's even better than Lessons from Life. If you are in the Urban Evolution business, you are now definitely in the Embrace the Paradox business. And as my final honorable mentions, 2 cards that I just kind of like. Abstract Performance has my favorite art of the set, and is a spicy fact or fiction variant, which I always enjoy. I like dilemma cards. And then we have Petrified Hamlet, which, hear me out on this, which I think might be CEDH viable. This is an untapped colorless land that lets us name a land card when it enters, and then activated abilities of those lands can't be activated unless they are mana abilities. So this doesn't turn off Gaia's Cradle, but it does hit Otawara and Boseiju and Talon Gates of Madara, disabling Oboro Breeze Caller lines. Against specifically Lumra, we can also name either Mirror Pool or Command Beacon. Crop Rotation can act as an emergency stifle with this land. And if there are no good targets, we can just name a random fetch land and hope it messes with our opponent's colors. Worth mentioning here that Petrified Hamlet makes it so that that land can then be tapped for colorless, so they can still play it and use the mana, but colors are actually a big deal in those 4 or 5 color CEDH decks. Now, not every deck can stomach playing very specific utility colorless lands, but well, some can, and in those I think this might actually have a home. I am seriously thinking of putting it into 6, and now I know that 6 isn't like a meta CEDH deck, but it's something. I don't know. I think the card is cool. Alright, it's time for my actual top 9, although it might be a couple more cards than that because there's interesting stuff to talk about. At number 9, we find Berta, Vice Extrapolator, and her 2 companions, Pensive Professor and Topiary Lecturer. All 3 of these creatures have Increment, which is a new mechanic that adds a +1/+1 counter to them when we cast a spell of higher mana value than either the creature's power or toughness. Berta is a 4-mana Quandrix 1/4 that gives us a mana of any color whenever she gets a counter. She also taps and lets us pay X mana to create a 0/0 fractal and then put X +1/+1 counters on it. Pensive Professor is a 3-mana blue 0/2 that draws us a card whenever we put a counter on it. And Topiary Lecturer is a 3-mana green 1/2 that taps for green mana equal to its power. All 3 of these cards are fantastic additions to any +1/+1 counter strategy. Both Pensive Professor and Topiary Lecturer already have similar cards that exist in Fathom Mage and Gyre Sage, and both of those are absolute staples in their archetype. I would even argue that Increment is easier to trigger than Evolve, so I fully expect Pensive Professor and Topiary Lecturer to just see tons of play. Berta is more unique in her effect, but certainly warrants building around. She can fill all kinds of interesting roles within a counter deck. When combined with Bristly Bill's Spine Sour, she effectively becomes a Lotus Cobra, and paired alongside Rosie Cotton or South Lane, token decks quickly take on a nasty shape. She even has her own infinite combo with Animation Module and Extruder. Given the right environment, Berta will produce seemingly endless mana, and can then even act as an outlet for that mana, although that outlet isn't very good. It's also worth noting that Berta acts as a bit of a cost reducer for a little while we're building up her increment counters. So even without synergies, she does actually contribute to a deck. Number 8 goes to Prismari Charm, a 2-mana Prismari instant that lets us choose one from among 3. We can either surveil 2 and then draw a card, or we can deal 1 damage to either 1 or 2 targets, or we can return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Usually modal cards like this are meant to be charging a premium for their modes, and in return offer flexibility. But Prismari Charm has really solid modes. 2-mana Bouncer Thing is reasonable, so is Surveil 2 and draw a card. I wouldn't even mind bolting 2 birds with this. Each of these modes should probably be priced at a mana and a half, so we're paying slightly more than we should, but really only slightly, which is more than made up for by its modularity. The premium on Prismari Charm is minimal, and the modes are great, making this a card worth playing. Number 7 is a shared spot for Emeritus of Truth and Emeritus of Woe. Yes, that does mean I think these 2 are about equal in power level, which may be a little surprising, but allow me to explain. The Emeriti are a cycle of cards in Secrets of Strixhaven that each have a classic alpha instant or sorcery as their prepared spell. To cast this spell, the creature needs to become prepared, which the creatures themselves define the conditions for. I want to clarify something before we get into the details. Both of these cards are among the best in the set, in my opinion, but Emeritus of Woe is quite hyped, whereas Emeritus of Truth is underappreciated. Because of that, I'm going to focus mostly on why Emeritus of Truth is better than most think, and why Emeritus of Woe is worse. But first I want to stress again that I think both are great. By the way, if you want my full assessment of the emeritus cycle as well as the paradigmata and dragon cycles, you can find that on my Patreon. I make lots of exclusive content over there. You can also find all of my deck lists on Patreon as well as the Jeopardy games I create. Your direct support goes a long way, so I try my best to make it worth your while. You can find the link to my Patreon in the description of this video, and I would also appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. Thanks. Emeritus of Truth is a 3-mana white 3/3 that creates a 1/1 flying Inkling token when it enters. We get to choose who gets this token, either we ourselves or one of our opponents. Then, if an opponent controls more creatures than us, Emeritus of Truth becomes prepared. This is the only way for it to become prepared. Unlike the other Emeriti, Emeritus of Truth can't re-prepare itself. So long as it's prepared, we get to cast its spell, which is Swords to Plowshares. For us to properly appreciate Emeritus of Truth, we first have to properly appreciate Swords to Plowshares. Swords to Plowshares is the best targeted creature removal spell ever printed. We Commander players have gotten quite used to this card, and I think that makes sense, because generally speaking, targeted creature removal is worse in Commander than it is in other formats, which makes Emeritus of Truth look less impressive than the other Emeriti with more flashy abilities. But I want to stress this point again. Swords to Plowshares is the best targeted creature removal spell ever printed. Getting access to another copy of it is very powerful. Have you ever played Seal of Doom? Seal of Doom is a 3-mana black enchantment that we can sacrifice to destroy target non-black creature. Seal of Doom has a really strange effect on any game it's in. Once we have it in play, our opponents know that once they play something scary, something we have to get rid of, we can immediately do so. They also know whoever puts something scary into play first is most likely to eat the seal. So, they wait. They don't play their scary thing at all. This is the same psychology that goes into Selfless Spirit. We have indestructibility on the board. If our opponents were to play a board wipe, it would go wasted. So, they don't even play it, and we don't have to sacrifice the spirit. Cards like this direct our opponent's actions in our favor, and Emeritus of Truth does the same. Ask yourself, if this fella is on the board, prepared, are you going to play your easy, or would you rather spend another turn developing and waiting? And then keep in mind that this particular seal is also at least a 3/3 for 3 mana. This of course assumes that Emeritus of Truth enters prepared, which is conditional, but it's really not difficult. Thanks to the Inkling we can gift, we should nearly always be able to manipulate the board state into our favor. And given how many token freaks play Commander, more often than not we should even be able to give the token to ourselves and still get the preparation. Absolute worst case scenario, we spend 3 mana on a 3/3 and a 1/1. This is actually somewhat reasonable, and it triggers a lot of synergies. We get to draw from Tokasia's Welcome, Enduring Innocence, and Caretaker's Talent. Earlier I mentioned that white has a great reanimation package for 3 mana creatures, and that remains true and applies here as well. We can have the Emeritus of Truth die or sacrifice it, and then easily bring it back for either another round of synergies or to get Swords to Plowshares online again. Maybe both. Keep in mind too that white has access to Flicker. Ephemerate this fella, get some tokens, kill some stuff. Good times. Emeritus of Woe is a 4-mana black 5/4 that enters prepared and becomes prepared again during our end step if 2 or more creatures died this turn. Its spell is Demonic Tutor. Demonic Tutor is of course incredible, one of the best cards in the game. However, this particular Demonic Tutor is quite costly, 6 mana total. Runescarred Demon is a 7-mana 6/6 with flying that's also a Demonic Tutor, and that card doesn't see much play. I mean, I play it because I think it's a cool demon, but you don't see it much outside of that. Emeritus of Woe is of course better because it's 1 mana less, and we can split it across multiple turns if we want to, and we can Demonic Tutor multiple times. But it's still a very expensive tutor. The best case scenario is of course casting it, casting the tutor, and re-preparing it again in the same turn, so we can tutor again next turn. But that's actually another issue with the card. It prepares itself in the end step, and Demonic Tutor is a sorcery, meaning Emeritus of Woe needs to survive an entire turn for us to get to use it again. Preparing it again is also not trivial. We need to either have a sacrifice engine in play, or enough mana to cast an Accursed Marauder, or something similar. You see my issue, right? It's just very expensive, it costs a lot of mana, and it requires a bunch of cards. And then we also need to hope our opponents don't immediately blow it up. But the power of Demonic Tutor is not to be understated. Demonic Tutor is one of the best cards in the entire format, and casting it is worth some trouble. So that's why I ranked these on the same level. They're both powerful, but in very different ways. Emeritus of Truth is easy to play and fits into existing synergies while having a high floor. Emeritus of Woe, on the other hand, requires more consideration, but its ceiling is also incredible. Number 6 goes to Decorum Dissertation, a 5-mana black sorcery lesson that has target player draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. It's also got Paradigm, which means we get to cast the spell again at the beginning of our first main phase for the rest of the game. Unfortunately, this effect can't be stacked. From the turn that we cast it onwards, Decorum Dissertation draws us 2 cards. I still play Phyrexian Arena in lower bracket games, and happily so. This is Giga Phyrexian Arena, drawing twice as many cards and faster, since it also immediately draws on the turn we cast it. It also can't be removed, and even has some political implications, since we can target it at any player. There's nothing complicated going on here, it's just enough cards for the rest of the game for 5 mana, and that's very powerful. I also want to give a quick shout out to both Improvisation Capstone and Restoration Seminar. Improvisation Capstone is a fun little value engine that we can ritual into quickly, and Restoration Seminar will work great in my AO deck. These aren't super good or anything, but I like them. Number 5. Muse Seeker, a 2-mana blue 1/2 that draws us a card whenever we cast an instant or sorcery spell. If we spend less than 5 mana on that spell, we then also have to discard a card. Looting effects like this are fantastic in Spellslinger decks. Of course, drawing cards would be even better, but we don't get drawing cards for less than 4 mana, and until now we wouldn't get looting for less than 3 either. Muse Seeker is now the cheapest instant sorcery looter and even has potential upside. It's not a complicated card, but if we're spellslinging, we'll really appreciate it. Emeritus of Ideation, the best Emeritus, takes spot number 4. This is a 5-mana blue 5/5 with flying and ward 2. Those are already incredible stats and keywords, a genuine threat by itself. It enters prepared, and we may re-prepare it by attacking with it and exiling 8 cards from our graveyard. Its spell is Ancestral Recall, another candidate for strongest card ever printed. Let's set aside the re-prepare aspect of this card and instead look at this card as a 6-mana 5/5 with flying and ward 2 that draws 3 cards on ETB. Isn't that just busted by itself? Especially when considering the ease with which we can trigger that ETB again. Any flicker suddenly gets the modality of spending an additional mana to draw 3 cards. Now this is of course quite mana expensive, 5 mana to cast a creature and 1 more each time we want to Ancestral Recall. But Emeritus of Ideation makes spending this mana easy. First, because Ancestral Recall is instant speed, so we can find a nice timing for it, and second, because it has inbuilt protection. Our opponents will have a much harder time taking this one down compared to the other Emeriti. Topping it off, Emeritus of Ideation can re-prepare itself quite easily. It does have a cost, but that cost fuels itself because it draws so many cards that we are likely to fill up our graveyard again. If Emeritus of Ideation sticks to the board, which again should be pretty easy because it has ward 2, then I think it's reasonable to expect that we can prepare 2 to 3 additional times, and that is a game-winning advantage. It reminds me a lot of the Unagi of Kyoshi Island, which has turned out to be a really fantastic card. Emeritus of Ideation is powerful by itself and easily fits into a variety of strategies while being both a huge beater and a fantastic card draw engine. Number 3 goes to a surprise card from the precons, Augusta, Order Returned. Augusta, Order Returned, is a 3-mana white 1/3 with flying and vigilance. Whenever she attacks, each player exiles a card from their graveyard. For each non-land card exiled this way, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. This can be Augusta herself or another creature. Augusta yet again meets the criteria that we are looking for in white creatures. Small power, 3 mana or less. Although her small power isn't long to stick around. As soon as Augusta attacks, we can grow her and grow her significantly. While at first some folks might have fetch lands to fodder into her, those will quickly run out, and then she begins feeding on whatever is left. This incidental graveyard hate will add up, dampening our opponent's chances to utilize theirs. All the while, Augusta becomes massive. She can gain +4/+4 per turn. Couple that with her amazing keywords that make it trivially easy to attack while still maintaining our defense. There are political aspects to this too. We can force our opponents into exiling specific cards in exchange for not smacking them with the flying 12/14 we spent 3 mana on. Augusta, Order Returned can easily fit into any white creature deck and perform excellently, but becomes especially impressive in a hate bears or stacks focused list. Try dealing with her while also handling a ruler flaw. What a nightmare. Number 2. Flashback. Flashback is a 1-mana red instant that gives target instant or sorcery in our graveyard flashback until end of turn. Its flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. Flashback is a god tier spell in Spellslinger list. Think of it as a modal spell where the modes are all the instants and sorceries in our graveyard. This becomes especially powerful when combined with effects that create mana as we cast. Think Ashling Flame Dancer, Stormkiln Artist, or Runaway Steamkin. The additional mana we have to pay for the flashback becomes inconsequential once we factor these into the equation, and any good Spellslinger deck wants to play them anyways. Spellslinger decks are kind of weird. There are a couple of cards where copying or reusing them is so much better than anything else that cards like Flashback become essential. At lower brackets, you want as many Inspired Tinkerings as possible, and in higher ones, Jeska's Will takes that place. Either way, Flashback enables our plans. It's especially nice that it's a low commitment option. We could of course blast the Past in Flames for value, but that feels worse and risky. Expensive, hardly worth it. Flashback though is easy and cheap to cast. It lets us poke for value, or, of course, also pull back into active pieces because it's an instant. It's sure to be a staple in Spellslinger decks across all brackets. Quick shout out as well to Traumatic Critique, which I think is really quite fantastic, and an auto-include in Prismari. Number 1 goes to Grave Researcher. Grave Researcher is a 3-mana black 3/3. At the beginning of our upkeep, it lets us surveil 1. Then if there are 3 or more creature cards in our graveyard, it becomes prepared. Its spell is Reanimate. This is the perfect prepared creature. It's cheap, so we can get it down early and easily. It fuels its own requirements, which are quick to be accomplished and once set up, can be met every turn without fail. And its spell is very powerful. On top of that, it provides value independent from its reanimation goals, being a soft card advantage engine. Going forward, if I'm playing a self-mill or reanimation deck, or even if I'm just keen on surveilling during my upkeep, I'm playing Grave Researcher. It's a low commitment card that always provides value and with potentially game-winning upside. I think it's easily the best card of the set for Social Commander. One final shout out to joint researchers who are similar and very good, but I mostly just love these dorks. You go on your gay little secret dates, you go get them. There's my list. Got a bunch of other cards that I was so close to bringing up, but man, I got a whole section about joint researchers, but I don't know. I like them a lot. They're very cool. Probably not like super good, but I do feel like they're just like this crazy card range. And if you have a lot of mana, but that's a big condition, right? Like, I mean, in my mono white deck, which is a landfall deck, which that's a whole other story. But in my mono white deck, I tend to have a lot of mana. So I will definitely be looking to include those. But I can see other mono white decks struggle a bit more with that. Although you really shouldn't. White is so good at ramping. Anyways, but the joint researchers are going to be great card draw in those kinds of lists. Anyhow, setting that aside, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I just wanted to write a little bit of a review for Secrets of Strixhaven. I know a lot of people really enjoy this set. I think it's pretty cool. No Edge of Eternities, not quite, but like it's pretty cool. I don't know. I like it. I don't want to make it sound as if I don't like it. Anyhow, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Check out the Patreon link in the description. Please support me. I would definitely appreciate that. And I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.